Hi CCSM, and welcome to our online service. We're so glad that you've joined us. As you can see, I'm not in the sanctuary again today. I got so much great feedback the last time I was in the woods, I thought I'd come back to the woods. So welcome, settle in, listen to the brook behind me, listen to the birds, enjoy virtually God's sanctuary. We're so glad that you've tuned in today, and we want you to know that you are welcome wherever you are, wherever you are viewing from, whoever you are viewing with, welcome. And happy 4th of July weekend. I hope you've been able to take some time this weekend to reflect on what it means to celebrate the 4th of July this year. We're going to have a special service today. You're going to hear from 10 different people who took the Monday evening class on what can we do, educating ourselves as white people about our next steps, about becoming actively anti-racist. You're going to hear some powerful things said from people who have really gone deep internally and who have committed to continue to do so. I think this is a time of reckoning for our nation, and I believe that it's also a time of reckoning for CCSM. I think our best work may be ahead of us. You know, it was 13 years ago, this first Sunday in July, that I came to CCSM, and you voted to call me as your senior minister. And what a great ride it's been. But I've been reflecting this week that it might be that I've been called here, and we've been called to this together for such a time as this. As a historically white church, to make a difference and to become the people that we are called to be. And so today, as we sing, as we reflect, as we take time to go deep, I invite you to do that with open hearts, open minds, and a willingness to show up and to change. Bless you for joining in today. And let's join in our opening hymn, "Oh Beautiful for Spacious Skies." You'll see the last two verses are different than the ones you might have known before, but I think they speak to this moment and this time. Let's sing together.
I'd like to use as a subject from which to speak this afternoon the other America. And I use this subject because there are literally two Americas. One America is beautiful for situation. And in a sense, this America is overflowing with the milk of prosperity and the honey of opportunity. This America is the habitat of millions of people who have food and material necessities for their bodies, and culture and education for their minds, and freedom and human dignity for their spirits. In this America, millions of people experience every day the opportunity of having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in all of their dimensions. And in this America, millions of young people grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America. And this other America has a daily ugliness about it that constantly transforms the buoyancy of hope into the fatigue of despair.
Hello, CCSM. I'm sharing about the 4-week study entitled, If Not Now, When? If Not Us, Who? The experience provided revelations of the hard truth kind. First, we learned that since shortly after the Civil War, America has been working to replace slavery with public policy that institutionalizes bias against blacks with the goal of making them a permanent underclass. We took in-depth looks into how this has been done in housing and in criminal justice, and we learned how the advancements of civil rights in the 1960s did not ensure human rights. For many of us, this was shocking and felt shaming, and we wondered how we had missed so much of the agenda against blacks. We came to understand that more is needed now than rectifying laws, that changes are imperative in the systems and power structures that run our country, that decide how opportunity is distributed, and that protect the privileged. And here, the second hard truth that we learned from the author of White Fragility was that white progressives may be more of an obstacle than a help to systemic change, in part because we tend to have a hard time seeing that we, of all people, have been complicit in the institutional injustices that have suppressed and inflicted harm on black people, and that we owe a debt to black people starting from when they did not receive reparations as white people did after the Civil War. At the end of our study, I came to see the justice that is called for in our country as like the kingdom of God, which, as Fred Rogers puts it, is for the brokenhearted. So there is much to do, and it is work of imagining a new world and of letting go of privilege so that the dispossessed may have their just due and place. It will take, as one person in our class stated it, thinking about how race-oriented our country is and living with the discomfort of that every day. This can be called a spiritual practice, and at this Kairos moment in history, I want to make it mine.
Hi, I'm Christine Pajoli, and I've just learned some shocking things in the What Can We Do class about Black Lives Matters, and I thought I knew about these things, and I didn't know it, and I'm just angry about it. And two things I'd just like to quickly share with you I've learned is about income disparity, that, white families have about 10 times the net worth of black families. Most of that comes from home ownership. and that home ownership was in fact denied to people by our legal system, by our police system, by the Federal Housing Authority, in public housing. You know, Congress got together and said, no, you must segregate. Congress would not lend money to developers like, Levittown in New York or Henry Dolger here at Westlake unless they agreed to forbid black people to move into these suburbs. And black people couldn't get the loans. So while white people were moving to the suburbs and building home equity in their homes, black people were kind of trapped back in urban areas where the jobs were disappearing. And that home equity is the basis of most white people's wealth. So that $10,000 home that was denied a black family in the 40s or 50s that's worth $1 million now, they missed out on. They couldn't use that equity to go to college or start a business or retire or give their children money for a down payment. And that was intentionally done by our political system. It's just infuriating. The second thing that really upset me was this issue of mass incarceration used as a way just to keep black people down. I don't know how else to say it. It was a political expedience to get votes, to say crime, bad guys, I'm hard on crime, I'm hard on drugs, and really there was no basis for that. They said crime is up. Nope, not true. It's been stable, even going down some, but black people are being arrested at 5 times the rate. We're told violent offenders need to be taken off the street. Most people aren't. Most of these are minor crimes that if it wasn't a new drug law, they wouldn't be in jail. And it's the same crimes that white people aren't arrested for, because we've been told that black people are more likely to sell drugs or take drugs. Nope, not true. White people do too, but they aren't put in jail. If you do meth, you're given treatment. If you do crack, you go to jail. And so not only have we lost, all the potential of a few generations of black people, we're actively harming and punishing and humiliating and killing black children and black men and black women. Right now, that's being done in my name. And if all of this could come about by political will, by our votes, by our taxes, by our attitudes, by the politicians we elect, we can take action and change it by our political will, by who we vote in and how we spend our taxes. Because this isn't a black problem that needs my sympathy. It's a human problem. It's a white problem. It's an issue that white people need to solve, and I intend to be part of the solution.
Hi, I'm Lori, and I'm new to the community. I joined the 4-week series with Dr. Reverend Penny and Reverend Kelly, and about 100 of the community members. Wow, was it an eye-opening month. I never considered myself racist. I don't believe in racism. But what I've learned is that it's happening around me, and by me not taking action, I'm allowing racism to happen. I can take the littlest action and it might make a difference. I learned that black and brown people, as I always knew, are being suppressed. But they're being suppressed in ways I had no idea about. We have to educate ourselves on what we can do to make a better world and a better America. As we learned in our series, there's 2 Americas. There's one America that we see every day, that we believe in. And then there's the America for black and brown people in our country. They struggle every day. They can't get ahead. And those in power, predominantly white, are allowing this to occur right now in 2020.
This class has completely changed my perspective. I used to notice the big events, Rodney King, Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, and all the more recent tragedies. Now I really see what's going on, meaning the underlying racism. intentionally designed systemic racism that I personally benefit from and contribute to if I remain silent. I'm now committed to end my silence, to continue to educate myself, and to figure out how I can be useful to the cause.
The class that Penny has been leading on white privilege and what can we do has been so amazing. And I've been trying to read not just the things from the class, but a lot of other things besides. And it has been overwhelming, but there's one thing in one of the articles I read that I thought was really helpful, and I'm just going to read that quote right now. And it said, you don't need to know everything in order to do this work. The best thing you can learn to do is to reorient yourself so that you are open to feedback, open to learning more, and or changing your mind and not having easy answers. And the truth is that applies to a whole lot of things besides what's going on now, but it's especially true for this whole concept of white privilege.
The title, What Can We Do, in Penny's 4 weekly sessions anticipates and expects outcomes of our study. So far, I have these outcomes. I deeply believe that racism in our country is a system with a long history. My knowledge of this history is far less than I thought. Many in our group voiced this. What I've now learned and have valued in my life leads me to further my commitment to increase and enrich justice throughout our region's civic communities. I've witnessed myself and others that learn of some history and apply their values in evaluating the systems. 2 others include sharing and exchanging these outcomes with my family. And I'm also going to remain open to learn, and by doing so, read the anti-racist book that my son is reading. Thanks very much.
How has this class changed me? Each week, the examination of racism in our country and our involvement in it engaged me more closely. The sermon of Reverend Moss moved me, and in week 2, I was outraged at hearing Richard Rothstein's research on residential segregation. But in neither case was the information new. I had been glued to the news, and I had read Rothstein's outstanding book. My response to week 3 was stronger. I had watched Michelle Alexander's video when it came out in 2013, and have now read her book. They describe the hopeless life experience of young African-American men whom the racialized war on drugs ushers into a life of crime, incarceration, and the denial of basic human rights as members of an undercaste. I was upset after first seeing the video, but managed to push that feeling aside. The problem is so huge and no one seemed to be dealing with it. So what could I, as one person, do? With week 4, the chickens have really come home to roost. Dr. Robin DiAngelo's lecture opened my eyes to my own racism and how that functions in my own life, despite whatever conscious beliefs and good intentions I may have. And it impressed me with how much internal work I have yet to do. While I still don't know precisely how I'm going to deal with the immense issues of racism in our society, at a minimum, I am going to be better able to call it out in myself. I came into this class in pain, wanting to do something to eliminate this 400-year blight in our society. If anything, the pain has sharpened, but I'm taking personally both the responsibility I bear in tolerating the blight and my responsibility to ameliorate it.
This class has opened my eyes to our history, even right here in the progressive Bay Area. I'm now beginning to understand how we got to a place where our neighborhoods are largely segregated and how the mass incarceration of Black men began. The concrete actions I want to take include electing officials who will enact reparations and eliminate the death penalty while implementing extreme prison sentencing reform.
My hope for America is that those of us who are white can practice humility and listen to the people who we have oppressed, so that we can learn about what needs to be done to heal the harm that has been caused by generations of racist society, policies, and institutions.
What I hope for America is that we can listen, take action, and begin the process of reconciliation.
My hope for America is that we will finally become what we were told, that we truly are created and should be treated as equals. My hope is that this time, this revolution can be different and will make real changes in our systems, practices, government, policy, allocation of funds, and at the end, we can all truly feel free and equal. It will really mean a change in our ideology as a country. This is a time to listen, to learn the true history, see the systems that perpetuate this marginalization, understand, speak up, vote with your values in the forefront. We have to do better. This time can and should be different.
So this is a song from Godspell. It's called Beautiful City. It was originally just in the film version, but Stephen Schwartz, after the Rodney King incident, where Rodney King was beaten by the police and then the police were eventually acquitted, and then the subsequent riots, Stephen Schwartz rewrote this song kind of in response to that. And the instrumental is provided by Instrumental Tracks from YouTube. Out of the ruins and rubble, out of the smoke, out of our night of struggle, can we see a ray of hope? One pale thin ray, reaching for the day. We can build a beautiful city. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can build a beautiful city. Not a city of angels, but we can build a city of man. We may not reach the ending, but we can start slowly but truly mending, brick by brick and heart by heart. Now, maybe now, we start learning how we can build a beautiful city. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can build a beautiful city. Not a city of angels, but we can build a city of man. When your trust is all but shattered, when your faith is all but killed, you can give up bitter and battered, or you can slowly start to build a beautiful city. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can build a beautiful city. Not a city of angels, but finally a city of man. A city of man. A city of man.
glad you were able to hear people from CCSM reflect on what we've been learning together on this holiday weekend. In my mind all week has been the song God Bless America. I used to love that song when I was a kid. We'd sing it in church, we'd sing it at home. I came from a very patriotic family. And of course, as a kid, your views are unexamined. You just take whatever your parents tell you. And then you begin to grow up and perhaps see the world differently than they did. And as many of you know, growing up in an evangelical, really fundamentalist environment, I was at church all the time. And as a kid growing up in the 60s, I don't ever remember my church talking about the civil rights movement or the Vietnam War. In fact, the only racial conversations we would have would be about the missionaries, the white saviors going to other lands to tell the black people and the brown people and the indigenous people about the gospel. For me, growing up, America and Christianity were conflated. But now when I sing or hear God Bless America, I have a very different notion. Yes, like many of you, I love my country, but I actually love the idea of my country and the ideals of my country. A passion for liberty and justice, a land of equality, is what we aspire to. But our aspirations and our reality are so different. And while religion and politics, quote unquote, is a complicated web, we also believe it is an anathema to the gospel not to talk about things that are around justice, around equity, and helping all people belong. Martin Luther King Jr., as you heard earlier, said there are two Americas, and I grew up in one America. And my black and brown and indigenous brothers and sisters, my siblings, in the great sea of humanity, have grown up in a different America. And my faith calls me, compels me, demands from me that I not only speak up and speak out, but that I do my own internal work to bring down the systemic racism, the original sin of racism, that when we look deeply, so defines our history. And for so many today, in this moment, defines their experience of America. In my life, I have always felt safe to call the police. In fact, my father was the police chief of our small town. My brother worked for the police in the town next to us. But when I was in South Africa, in the townships, in Soweto, with my black South African friends, and something went down, and I simply said, call the police, they all began to laugh and look with dismay at me, because the police wouldn't protect them. For them, the police weren't safe. And that is the experience. A great number of our black and brown brothers and sisters in this country. And so as we look at reform, as we look at the mental health issues in our nation, as we look at the use of force, you know, San Mateo County just passed a resolution about Black Lives Matters. Black Lives Matter. And at that same meeting, voted to spend $1 million on tasers. And we have had more than, but at least 3 taser deaths of unarmed black men in San Mateo County. We need to begin to change the way, the lens through which we look at our country. And we need to help one another live up to our ideals. And that takes facing not only the reality of what's going on in our country, but also our own complicity in it, our own benefiting from it, our own, as somebody said earlier in the testimonies, racial indifference. This is a Kairos moment, a moment of opportunity. And as I said in the welcome, I believe that we are called for such a time as this. And so together, may we face what is. May we do our own internal work. And may we pray, God bless America, and may we help it be so.
We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives.
Hi, my name is Zoe Mullery, and I have been working at the Congregational Church as an administrative assistant part-time since 1991. You do the math, it's a long time. And my parents, Mike and Lee Mullery, are pillars of this church and have been members for many decades. And I also teach creative writing at San Quentin State Prison. And Penny asked me to say a few words about the unfolding humanitarian crisis that's happening at San Quentin right now. San Quentin is the oldest prison in California. It has about 3,800 residents there, and currently about over 1/3 of people living there right now are testing positive. So that's over 1,100 people are testing positive from COVID, and this was a completely avoidable situation. People were moved from another prison where there was a big outbreak, and they were just moved without being tested into a tinderbox of a prison where people, there's just absolutely no way to social distance. People live 2 men to a 9-foot by 4-foot cell, if you can imagine that, or else in dormitory housing in a large gym. And there's not adequate medical care. There's not enough staff to care for people. People who are getting sick are being put in solitary without any, without the rooms being cleaned, without electricity. I mean, it's a barbaric situation. It's a situation that I think we will look back on in the future, and we will think, how could we have been so barbaric? Kind of like we look back on slavery, we look back on Jim Crow, we look back on the way Native Americans were treated, or the Japanese were interned during World War II, and we think, how could we have done this? And I think this is a situation right now in which we will look back and think, how could we have been so barbaric? How did we not stop that from happening? Because people's lives are really being treated as if they are dirt, as if they don't matter at all. They're being treated like scum, and they're political pawns. And so I would like to advocate. I'd like to ask all of you, this caring community, to be advocating for them. I'm putting some links in the bulletin just to educate yourself if you don't already know about the prison situation and the criminal justice system in this country. I'd like to advocate for you to learn about the ways that the racial history of this country plays so deeply into who's in prison and why they're treated the way they are. And I'd like to just advocate for you in this moment. There's a hunger strike happening at San Quentin as the men, some of my students, some of my beloved students who I've known for many years, are fighting for their lives and asking for people to remember them and to put pressure on the powers that be so that they don't die and so that they aren't forgotten and they aren't neglected to the point of death. So I'd like to ask you to do that advocacy, and then I'm also putting in a couple links of places to give donations. There's really not much we can do at this point to stop what's already underway, but perhaps there are some ways that we can help, that some of our power and donations could help in this situation. So thank you for being such a caring community, and please pass the word. Thank you.
'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where you ought to be. And when you find yourself in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, 'twill be our delight, where by turning we come round right.
These simple gifts are before us. The gift of bread from the earth, by wheat grown from the earth, and fruit of the vine from grapes crushed. I imagine it was more often than not that Jesus celebrated this meal with his disciples, not just in that upper room, but on the way they broke bread many times, inviting all kinds of people who society would push aside. They were at the center of the table of Jesus. And here we are today, remembering his words so clearly when he took bread and he broke it. And he said, "This is my body, and it is broken open for you. Whenever you eat this, remember me." And he took the cup and he poured it, and he said, "This is my love and my life, and it is poured out for you. My life's blood spilt. Whenever you drink this, remember me." Today we come and we want the bread of liberation and the cup of freedom in this country and all over the world to be for all people. And so we take in that presence of the Holy One, to fortify us and sustain us, that we might be people of liberation and people of freedom, and that we might live in such a way that this sacrament of grace that we celebrate becomes more real in our world. Wherever you are, receive this meal in the spirit in which it was given.
shelter, a space, a safe place for growing, for everyone born, a star overhead. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yet God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and peace. For young and for old, a place at the table, a voice to be heard, a part of the song. The hands of the child in hands that are wrinkled, for young and for old, the right to belong. And God will delight when we are creations of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and for everyone born, a place at the table, to live without fear and simply to be, to work, to speak out, to witness and worship, for everyone born, the right to be free. And God will delight when we are creations of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yet God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and joy, justice and joy, justice and
And now, beloved friends, receive the benediction. May the sound of the rushing waters bring you calm. May the strength of the trees give you courage. May the majesty of the mountains bless you with grace. And may the blessing of the Holy One, that source of life that animates us all and all of creation, be real and present to you now and always. Amen.